St. John Terrell was an amazing man. He was an entrepreneur and he was the ultimate showman. He was tall and handsome, a big engaging smile, and a bit of a huckster. I believe that St. John could sell ice to Eskimos. He knew how to get people excited. He really did give them value for their money because he always gave them something more than they expected, bigger than life. When he was in the Army in World War II, where he was stationed, he was in charge of entertainment for his unit. And at the time they would set up, if they had a stage show coming in, they would set up a stage, and then all the soldiers would sit out in the field in front of the stage. And he realized that the soldiers in the back couldn't see what was going on. They weren't as close to the stage as they needed to be. So he devised a plan where he commandeered some Army bulldozers, and they dug a big pit, a bowl in the ground, and placed the stage in the center. Very much in the Greek style of theater, of the amphitheater type of seating. When he returned from World War II and decided that he wanted to open up a theater, he decided to take that idea and created the music circus, but instead of it just being an open air bowl, he put a circus tent on top of it, and thus it was called the music circus.
I guess half of Lambertville used to come up here and help raise the tents.
The original site was magical. It was placed right in a neighborhood. The tent itself in the theater held, I believe, 1,500 people. And it was in the round, even though it was an oval, because it was under a two-poled circus tent.
You're in the middle of a tent, and there are 6 aisles going down from every side, all the way up to the stage, and the stage was a round thing. And you often did scenes, you had to time all your entrances up and down those aisles, because many times people came from all the aisles at once. And then you had up at the top of the aisles, on 2 different sides, you would have stages up there that had to be lighted, because when you did a scene up there, they would change the set. That was how they got the set changed down below.
The dressing rooms, of course, were in the back of the theater. And they were bare bones, cinder block buildings, no air conditioning, very little ventilation. And I do remember, as a young person, going into those dressing rooms, there was an aroma, which was a mixture of the grease paint, the makeup, these costumes, and perspiration. And all of these were mixed together, and it made your heart beat faster. So I do understand, when theater people say, that they have grease paint in their blood, I can see what they mean by that, because I would get the same effect going into the dressing room.
St. John Terrell was a showman. He started out as an actor, as far as I know, and he turned into a promoter and producer. He put forth an image of himself which was not quite the same as what he was inside. But he knew that show business is at least half image. And basically, I never saw too much of the inner side. I saw mostly the outer. And that's the same as everyone. Everyone only saw what he wanted them to see.
Every night he The lights came up and he came in the center stage and he talked to the audience like he were in his living room.
The Music Circus primarily produced and staged musicals.
Auditions in New York went this way. The people who were being considered for leads in the main musicals, they were contacted through agencies like William Morris and the other agencies. They came with their own accompanist. They got a full 15, 20 minutes. Then there were the equity calls. By the time I arrived at 8:45, there were 200 people there, sitting waiting to try to get 8 singing slots and 4 dance slots in the company, as well as perhaps some minor roles. The stage manager announced their name. They gave the pianist their music. I would say, I'd like to hear 16 bars of a ballad and about 8 bars of a patter song. And they left a picture, and meantime we're making our notes. The choreographer would take them through some dance combinations. Now, the open call, sometimes referred to as cattle calls, and St. John would only give me about 2 hours to see 400 people, because we're paying an accompanist, we're renting the studio. So I would bring in 8 at a time. They would put their pictures on the table for the director and the choreographer. And I would walk down the line and I would say, would you please sing My Country 'Tis of Thee? They would look at me, what? I mean, they've just come out of probably singing the lead in Carousel at their major college performance. And I would say, no, just please. And I would listen to 8 people as I walked down singing My Country 'Tis of Thee, all of them singing at once. And I would say to the choreographer after 1, 3, 6. And the other ones were told, thank you very much. But still, the best ones got the jobs, went on to other shows and careers on Broadway. And it was just the nature of the business that we had to do things that way.
I've worked in a lot of theater since Lambertville. I have never worked as hard as I did then. We did one show every week. The show opened on Tuesday night. They started rehearsal on Wednesday, Monday night off, and then opened another show the next week. So I was a chorus of dancers and singers and 2 character people who were with us for the whole summer. The rest of the cast would come in just for the week, and they would frequently tour. And in fact, St. John ended up having 2 other tents, one in Neptune, which is outside of Asbury Park, and the other one in Haddonfield, which is outside of Camden.
Rehearsal schedule. Because of equity union rules, a work week was 40 hours. So in a 40-hour work week, the resident company are doing a show every night. So there's 3 hours per show, 8 shows a week. That's 24 hours of their 40-hour work week taken up. That leaves 16 hours to learn the next show. Every line, every song, every lyric, every dance step, every entrance, every costume change, 16 hours. So you take out the costume call, which was the last thing done, the costume parade, that was 1 hour. That left 15 hours for rehearsal. You had a dress rehearsal, which was really a performance that took 2.5 hours plus a half-hour notes. So that cut it down to 12 hours. So literally, in 12 hours, we taught and, quote, polished everything that had to be done. I often spent an hour and maybe 1.5 hours to 2 hours teaching all the music, and I never had a moment alone to reteach any of that before the show opened. Now, these were great, young, professional people, and they worked on their own music. But that's how short amount of time I had with the company. And then you had to work with the leads. And don't forget, I'm doing shows every night too. So I'm not available at night. My only time available is the daytime. We did every show with the orchestra in 4 hours, and it opened that night. It's not like they had time to go practice some music for a week. They looked at it, they played it through with me in the morning, they went home, they came back at night, and we did opening night.
I was particularly interested in the musicals. I loved the musicals. But also the jazz afforded me a chance to see some of the great jazz orchestras and musicians.
I think when you're 16 and 17, you're in awe Well, he started those Monday night concerts, and there's Liberace, and there's Duke Ellington, and there's Count Basie, and you know, you didn't go and approach them, but you could say, well, I was right there, I was right next to him, or I served him with Coke, or I made him, you know, this and that. And it was just so exciting. They really took off, those Monday night jazz.
I was very fortunate, I guess, that I lived around the corner from Harriet Redding. And one of the duties at that time for Harriet was to round up some local kids to take part in the shows when it was required. Showboat was going to be performed in 1951, and Harriet came and asked if I would be interested in auditioning for the role of Kim. Of course, this was a dream come true for me, and I was very excited and indeed auditioned and got the role. I remember the rehearsals. We would go down to the Lambertville Oddfellows Hall, and everyone would be there getting ready to go through the rehearsals. And I can remember the director, Bobby Jarvis, and he was just so animated. I loved him.
The Music Man was, we did that a couple of times when I was there, and that was great fun because we got the local high school band to march across the stage in 76 trombones. They would come up one side, go down the ramp, go across the stage, and go upside, go all around the tent playing. It was a kind of community thing involved in it.
Art Frank came to me and said, would you like to be in The King and I said, of course. And I was a young kid, part of the King's family, with Cheryl Conway. It was in the summer of 1961. And it was just a great experience to be there. The Lambertville Music Circus was an icon.
I made 75 cents an hour when I first started. You had to stay until intermission. And then if you worked in one of the concession stands at intermission selling the proverbial orange drink that was in all theaters at that time, you made an extra 25 cents. So I think my first paycheck from the Music Circus was about $18.
I started working at the Music Circus when I was 15 in 1960. I got hired as a staff artist. And my duties basically were to paint signs, but the fact that it gave me access to the shows in the evening was all I really, really cared about. And then the following year, I came back and got a job working in the scene shop. And there was a period where I was a scene boy, where we would run the sets up and down the aisles. And then I also got to know the business end of it by working in the box office.
It's my first CD that came out a few years ago, and I called it Music Mountain, and I got a picture of the old Music Circus on the front, and when you open it up it shows the whole thing like in a big panorama scene, and I named it Music Mountain because I was really impressed by the people that played up there, and they really affected me a lot, and it gave me sort of an impetus to do music, which I still do today.
Most of the chairs were canvas captain's chairs, but in the back there were rows of metal folding chairs, and those metal folding chairs, depending upon what night it was, if it was a weeknight, I think they sold for like $1.75, and the main down in the front row on the most expensive night I think was no more than $4.75.
One of the great things about the Music Circus was that the variety of acts that the Music Circus had meant that we covered a broad spectrum of audience, so that the people, for instance, who came to see the Righteous Brothers were not necessarily the same people who wanted to see Liberace, or the ones who came to one of the rock concerts were certainly not the same audience as those who came to the Merry Widow. That was one of its great strengths, the fact that the Music Circus appealed to a wide variety of people, and there was something for everyone there. As I said, even the children's shows, and for a while we ran a children's school, acting school.
Some of the most wonderful people I worked with there, well, Dom DeLuise. This was young Dom DeLuise, but all of us knew that he was going to be something really big. I mean, I almost wet my pants in the pit every night. He was that funny.
Ever Horton, he was up there. I remember when I was young, Mom came home one time with his autograph, which I always liked and thought that was really neat that Mom would get that autograph for me because I liked him.
I remember one day I had to take a telegram around the back to the dressing room to Louis Armstrong. And I just remember how, you know, starstruck I was, but I also remember a lovely man, no star attitude.
Louis Armstrong, he was very quiet. He got off the bus and he said to me, "Would you just come and sit with me while I have lunch?" He had a brown bag. We sat in the dressing rooms. He didn't really talk. He just wanted somebody to be there and have a meal with him. So I sat, we chatted very little. The moment came to introduce him, and I was the one who did the introductions. Louis Armstrong came to the top of the tent, and he made his entrance down the aisle. The orchestra was already on the stage. And I said, "And now, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Louis Armstrong." And with that, he suddenly came to life. It was like a possessed man walking down the aisle and doing the show. And after the show, again, very quiet, he thanked me for having lunch and went off. He was a great attraction. He always did well, and he was a very nice man to get along with.
I worked with Vinnie Gardenia there for so many shows. He liked to come back there because it was an easy run out from New York, and if he were free, he would do the shows. What a wonderful human being. What a superb performer. It was a pleasure doing a show with him.
There was a kid in a show a little over her head, and we had a dress rehearsal, and she broke down. And she just started bawling her head off because she couldn't do the line, or she couldn't do the scene, or the director said, "Stop, go back, stop, go back." And that was Elaine Stritch in Anything Goes. I never realized that they were human, the actors, until I saw her crying her head off.
I remember Elaine Stritch doing The King and I. She was an unlikely choice, really, for that role, but she's a wonderful actress. She did a great job. People were so astounded that she had been cast in that role. She didn't seem at all to be the right type. One of the last shows at the Music Circus when I was there was Hello, Dolly. And Dorothy Lamour was in Hello, Dolly. Jose Greco used to come there on a regular basis.
South Pacific played there 4 times, and I was there for 2 of the productions. And one of them, James Michener, who wrote Tales of the South Pacific, on which South Pacific is based, lived in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, just across the river. And he played the professor in South Pacific at the Music Circus in one of the productions. Liberace ended the 1956 season. He had fans who followed him absolutely everywhere he went. The little ladies would have cookies and cupcakes and things, and they'd be standing outside, there'd be a line outside his dressing room every night after the show. But I had the privilege of moving his piano onto the stage and unpacking the glass top, and we had all that stuff. My only job there was really just setting it up and taking it down. Bruce Kirby was in a couple of shows. I think it's about the first thing that he did. He changed careers and decided he wanted to be an actor, and brought the whole family. And he had 2 sons, Bruno and John. Bruno went on to become an actor and be better known than his father. And his wife was a great cook, and so she would cook up massive batches of spaghetti when there'd be a rehearsal where we'd be eating and invite everybody to that. And got the 2 little kids running around there. Beautiful, wonderful people.
I remember Patrice Munsell in The Merry Widow. I remember what St. John said about her. Of course, this was at the tail end of her career, but she still had all those high notes. And St. John said to me, when they hit the money notes, bump those lights, bump those lights. St. John was always there to help her with those high notes and let the audience know this was the money note.
The guy came backstage, the scene doc, and said, "You in charge of props?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, you take care of wardrobe too, right?" I said, "I don't know, do I?" He said, "Yeah, a good property man takes care of the wardrobe." "Oh, okay." He said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you $5. If you take care of me, I'll give you another $5 when I leave." I said, "What do you want?" I said, "I don't know what I want yet, but I'll want something." So that was a guy named Jack Good. Jack Good was a Broadway banana comic, if you know what I mean. So he came back to me and he said, I'll tell you what I need an entrance. I said, what do I know about entrance? He says, I want you to get me a little burro, an ass, a little donkey. And I got an idea. I want to come down the aisle with a carrot and a fishing pole and ride onto the stage and then get rid of the donkey. I said, every night? He said, yeah, every night. Matinees, two matinees. So I had to go to a pet show and I rented an animal and had to arrange for the trailer to bring it every night and take it back every night. And he gave me the $5. He was their best comic, Jack Good.
Larry Hagman was there in South Pacific. Shirley MacLaine danced in the chorus as Shirley Beatty. Gwyneth Paltrow's uncle Harry Danner was in the chorus there one summer as well.
Some of the famous people who came out of the Music Circus, in other words, they weren't famous when they played at the Music Circus, but they went on to big careers. Robert Goulet was a singer. Bernadette Peters still is on Broadway. Bea Arthur started out at the Music Circus. She was in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes.
I worked with St. John in the mid-50s. I had been working on Broadway in the chorus, and I wanted to see if I had it as a soloist at all. One of the places close to New York that everybody went to immediately was for St. John, because you had proximity to Manhattan, and directors, choreographers, producers all came there. It was a wonderful place to get started. One of the biggest contracts I had was to do Bill Calhoun and Kiss Me Kate. To fill in, I did all of the singing, dancing things. Pajama Game, Steam Heat, Damn Yankees, Who's Got the Pain, Plain and Fancy, Mambo Joe.
I think St. John Terrell or his representatives called me and said, did I want to do the City Lady and play? And I said, sure, yeah. I knew only what I'd have songs, and I already knew them. As a matter of fact, the original Broadway producer came to see it, and he said, you're all just as great as the Broadway cast. He was so pleased with the show. It was wonderful. It was great. What's not to like, you know? One of my chorus members was Linda Lavin. She told me this many years ago. She said, you know, I was in your chorus in Haddonfield. I said, oh, my God. Although Audrey had done many shows for St. John Terrell. That's where she got a lot of experience, was working for St. John. Oh, gee, it was such a wonderful experience.
But St. John Terrell was wonderful because he was creative enough and open enough. That's the real trick to being open, to accepting somebody putting ice in your musical, which is a famous musical on the town, or Pal Joey, or Call Me Madam, and so forth, and suddenly changing the script. We put together these shows there where we could introduce skating, and one of them was on the town. And the way I did that was introduce actual scenes that were part of the story of the show, but could be converted into a place where they'd have ice skating. For example, we took the Times Square Ballet and turned it into the Rockefeller Center Ballet. I don't remember the exact choreography, but I'm sure the conga went up around the back, and while they were up around the back of the theater, the guys, the stagehands, quickly put the boards back on the ice. So your eyes were looking up there, but they were fixing the ice back to a thing, and then the rest of the show would go on with it. I mean, I knew the things that I could do, and I knew how to reconstruct it for the space. I was greatly helped by one of the dancers in the show, who was a wonderful choreographer, Ken Ermstrom. He helped reshape it so that it would have the theatrical impact in that space that I could coalesce everything into it.
Wish You Were Here has a swimming pool. And how do you do a swimming pool in a tent in the round? Well, you send the orchestra up to the back. An orchestra pit gets a plastic lining in it and gets filled with water. Well, a swimming pool isn't there for all of the scenes. So there's a cover goes over the swimming pool. And that was made up of 6 fairly hefty, big chunks of board, because of course the choreographer and the director wanted to use that extra stage space they had. The swimming pool is the end of the first act, the blackout before that scene. We all go running down and we lift up these pieces. Well, it took 2 people to carry each one, so we got 6 of these things, so that's at least 2 trips for everybody right there. It was all well choreographed, and then the audience had a plastic sheet down in front of them so that the people in the front row could pull it up.
Musical theater in the tents was a very tough business economically. It was very, you could only put so many people in a tent. You only had so much room for parking. You couldn't charge big prices, because if it were big price, the people would say, why don't we just go to New York? So there was always that fine line of what St. John could do. And so therefore, St. John was always looking for ways to do things as economically as possible.
St. John was not afraid to get his hands dirty. And of course, everyone who worked at the Music Circus appreciated that. He was not above getting involved with anything if it needed to be done. In the Delaware Valley, thunderstorms will come up very suddenly with very little warning. And so what one does with a tent during a thunderstorm is you close all the flaps that face towards the oncoming storm, and you open the flaps away from the storm so that air pressure can't build up inside. Usually that's very effective, but there was one particular storm that must have been too strong for that to work. And St. John realized, having been a circus person, having been in carnivals and things, that this was very dangerous, and that the top flaps had to be opened. So he asked a few of his guys about this, none of them would go, because it was like riding the back of a whale. The tent was rising and falling and undulating like a serpent, like this. And St. John wasn't about to let his tent be destroyed. So even though he was dressed in a business suit, using the ropes that go up one of the ribs, he pulled himself up in this thunderstorm with the rain pounding on his back, and climbed to the top and removed one skirt, and then went across the bridge and removed the other skirt, and let himself down, and thus he saved the tent. And this is all while there is an audience and a show going on inside.
It was a wonderful cultural and entertainment vehicle for the area. Everybody went. Everybody knew about it, and he hired a lot of local people. He added a lot to the economy of Lambertville. The performers, a lot of them stayed at Lambertville House or at other rooming houses in Lambertville. The actors all spent their money in town, eating and living. And Lambertville Music Circus was the lifeblood of the little sleepy town of Lambertville.
The people in town really didn't realize what they had. They would complain that there was too much traffic in town. They didn't realize they had one of the main venues for music on the East Coast right in their town. And it was a blessing to this area as far as bringing people in and creating business.
There's one story that's told that during the 50s, the mayor of Lambertville came to St. John and complained to him, Mr. Terrell, your theater causes traffic jams through Lambertville. People coming from Philadelphia and going up the hill to Music Mountain before the performance, and then after the show is over, they're all leaving to go home, and they create traffic jams in Lambertville, and they never stop to buy anything. St. John said, well, what do you mean? No, I think the Music Circus is an asset to Lambertville. We hire a lot of people here, and the mayor wouldn't agree. Oh yeah, well maybe you hire a few people, for concessions or stuff, but you don't really make an impact on Lambertville, financially. So the next day, St. John told his treasurer, go to the bank, and I want you to get silver dollars, enough to pay everyone on payday in silver dollars, and do this for a couple of weeks. So the treasurer went to the bank and ordered enough silver dollars to meet the payroll. It wasn't more than a few weeks later, it was the talk of the town. Where in the hell are all these silver dollars coming from? Everyone has silver dollars. All the stores had silver dollars. And so it was St. John's way of proving to the mayor and to any other doubters in Lambertville that the theater, the music circus, was an asset and was good for the economy of Lambertville.
St. John Terrell decided to move Music Circus about, maybe a quarter mile away, up 179 a little bit, and he made his own entranceway. And I think the main reason for that is he wanted to expand the seating a little bit. He upgraded everything, and the parking. People were driving more. They weren't coming 5 people in a car and coming by bus or anything. They were taking, everybody had their own car in the 60s. Also, he had plans to build a restaurant up there, which he did, and that was called the Barnum, I think, originally. Went through 3 different names.
As the musicals fell out of favor, St. John decided that he'd better update some of his acts, and he started to bring in rock groups and contemporary groups. Any group in the 60s and 70s that was on the top of the charts probably played at the Music Circus.
The idea that there would be both musicals that we produced and things that we brought in were a long-term part of what the Music Circus was. And it was organized in a very specific way. On Monday nights, those were the so-called jazz nights. Then we ran musicals Tuesday through Sunday. We had children's shows in the afternoon on Saturday. And we had, then Sunday afternoons were folk. So the idea that we would do all of these things was always part of the Music Circus. One of the ways that we were able to get some of those attractions that were really hot was the fact that we could fit them in to a variety of places, so that the possibility of getting the Lovin' Spoonful, as an example, on their way to somebody else, maybe they would play an afternoon for us. I mean, it's hard to believe that a theater of 2,100 seats could get Simon and Garfunkel, who were at the top, or the Righteous Brothers at the top. But they came out there. We were close to New York. This fit into their schedules, and we were able to get them 2 or 3 years later. They were not available to us. They were playing in arenas of 10,000 people. And that's one of the problems that the Music Circus encountered.
In the 60s, when the bands started playing there and they had big name act, St. John's son, Bart, would get me backstage to hang out with the bands. I hung out with B.B. King, with Stevie Wonder, with Paul Butterfield Band, with Ray Charles, and that had a great influence with me as a young guy, like 15, 16, 17 years old. Just a starting out musician myself, that had a big influence on me, seeing how those people were backstage and getting to talk to them a little bit. I remember it was a big scene in town when Stevie Wonder, they brought Stevie Wonder down into town to go to the Black Barber Shop, which was over on York Street. He needed his hair cut and trimmed for the show, and he was little Stevie Wonder at the time. He was only about like 16, 17 years old. And they brought him down here, and everybody in town went over to the barber shop to look in the window to see Stevie Wonder in there. One time, Frankie Valli was doing his laundry. He had his laundry done, sent out from the hotel. I think he was staying at the Lambertville house, I'm not sure. And he sent his laundry out to get done. Somebody said, I just did Frankie Valli's laundry. And I thought that was the coolest thing.
Al Hirt was at the top of his game, was as hot as you could get. And he was flying from Connecticut on a private plane to get to the Music Circus to meet his band, which was there already.
We were sold out weeks in advance, and he was scheduled to play on this night when, if the weather could have been any worse, it would have been called a hurricane.
Because of the weather, he couldn't get all the way into Lambertville, or couldn't get nearby Lambertville. So they landed the plane wherever it was, and we alerted the police, and the police blocked off the highways so Al Hirt could get there.
The new tent had a long driveway, and at the point of the driveway was the box office, which was an A-frame. And they decided that that night they weren't letting anybody else up on that hill but people that had tickets. And so they moved our box office. We had to go down on the road
The music circus was sold out, and we put in lots of extra chairs around the top because Al Hirt was selling out so fast. And the tickets for that night, we wrote by hand because they were not part of our regular stack of tickets. So here were all these seat numbers in ink. And our box office people were down at the highway collecting tickets, and of course it rained on the tickets. So when people got up there, we had no idea where they were supposed to sit.
I remember stopping this one car and I said, "Sir, could we see your tickets?" And he said, "Big Daddy don't need no tickets." And that was Al Hirt coming in from Pennsylvania.
And I don't know how we survived all of that, but Al Hirt did eventually get there because the police brought him on the blocked off highways. He was driving down the wrong side of the highway while they stopped all the traffic. And Al Hirt stayed, he played for longer than his normal set, and it turned out to be a great evening, but it was a nightmare.
On the night that Richie Havens performed, he was playing all through one of these terrible storms, and he would stop and he would say, "All is well," you know, sort of calm us all down and say, "We're going to get through this." All of the concerts were full of energy. You would come up onto that hill and you would see this tent and you would know that it wasn't this gigantic venue. Before and after shows, the stars would be available to you. But one of the times, the Love and Spoonful appeared in the afternoon. I was waiting outside to come into the tent, and the car pulled up, and it was all of them. And I happened to get to see Zal come out first, and whatever possessed me to do this, I don't know, but I went over and gave him a hug and a kiss, and a Trenton Times photographer was around, and they took a picture of me. We lived for the summers. The 60s was a time that was on fire with music and art and poetry, and at the Lambertville Music Circus, it was the hub for New Jersey.
Another interesting group that we had there were the Supremes. At the time, the Supremes were really just beginning, and they didn't have a stage show. They were just on records. Berry Gordy, who was the head of Motown, used the Music Circus as a kind of tryout and rehearsal place for putting together the Supreme stage show. So they actually were rehearsing there every day. Berry Gordy and his team came down and stayed with the Supremes for that week, working on their show. That was another interesting kind of thing that happened.
Back when I was in high school, I guess I was about 16, and we had a group called the Prophets, and we entered this nationwide battle of the band. Phil Spector, he was there, he was one of the judges. They had a list of judges' rules that they'd be judging on, and one of the things you'd get points for judging was if you were watching this band on TV and the sound of the TV went off, would their look still keep you interested enough to keep the station? And so we got to thinking, you know, the name of the group was the Prophets, so everybody else was dressed like the Beatles, and we wore these togas. That got us points, and also you had to do an original song. I think we got a few points for that. But St. John Terrell's Music Circus just opened a lot of doors for us.
The bands wanted to do this both for the reputation and for the fact that they were going to get $1,000 and a recording contract and all of that. And they were going to have an opportunity to meet Cousin Brucey. Cousin Brucey had to be flown to the Music Circus by helicopter. And I still see him getting off that helicopter, the kids running toward it, our having to keep them all back. Cousin Brucey was an enormous celebrity.
like I should have done to you. When we played at the music circus in Lambertville, what I remember that, first of all, it's a beautiful town. It was like very quaint, in the woods, and just like something like a fantasy land to some degree. And then when we got on the site and they had the tent, that made it. And I still love that. That was a beautiful situation to play in. When you're playing under a tent, it's a whole different atmosphere where the tent is open, the people are all sitting down, and you could see the nature, the plants and everything outside of it. So that is one thing that I still love about that place, number one. Number two, the stage would revolve, and it revolved super duper slowly, so slow that you wouldn't even notice it. I mean, this thing was revolving so slow. So what happened is we're playing on the revolving stage, we're doing our show, and we didn't even forgot about the fact that it revolves. They told us that, but you know, you're looking down, you're playing, you look up, all of a sudden the audience is different. Now, that's a little bit of a head trip there, because, you know, I don't know if we were doing any stuff at that time but that's a head trip in itself when you get up and the whole audience that you just looked at is over there, and there's another, and then you start saying, is it me? What's going on, you know? But I just remember the full house, a lot of people, beautiful atmosphere, the tent makes it. I still love that to this. I wish they would have more of that around the country.
I could see signs of the decline before I left. I could see that the audience was much less interested in musicals. So instead of having a full season of musicals where they might do a dozen of them, they ended up only doing 2 or 3 a season. And the rest of the time was filled with concerts. And I could see that Mr. Terrell felt the pressure of his audience declining. Because even when I was there, I remember specifically that we needed, for one show, we needed, as a prop, we needed a silver tea service. And that meant going and renting it, which was rather expensive because it was silver and the insurance and all that. And he said, oh, don't bother renting it. Just take some plywood and cut out a silhouette of a tea service and paint it black. The audience will get the idea. Well, what I think happened is the audience did get the idea. That the production values were dropping and that it was becoming a little chintzier. And of course, some people then wouldn't go, and so the audience started to dwindle.
See, when we first started, there wasn't any television. And there'd be 1,500 people a night come up from Philadelphia to see this live entertainment. But television started to eat into it badly. People sit home with the idiot box instead of go to live entertainment.
The theme changed a little bit. He had a lot of rock groups, which he didn't in the beginning, and maybe the older people didn't go for that as much. St. John was getting older, I guess.
He was finding that it was a lot of work having the restaurant and the tent theater going, and it was getting a little heavy for him to do, and he decided to, the heck with it, let somebody else either run it or I'm going to retire. Which he did.
I decided to create the Music Circus website that I now host in 2005. I was talking to some friends and telling them stories about the Music Circus and what a magical time it was, and realized that apparently there's no record of this. There was no website at the time. So I decided to start the website so that there would be a record that the Music Circus actually existed.
I hope a lot of people that you talk to have the same good memories that we have.